around this time, but I figured I'd answer some questions. With the trade, it sort of happened quickly. We had some people inquire during the draft, nothing that really made sense, and Cowboys reached out. I don't really remember what day it was, but earlier this week, and they gave us they proposed something that for us to think about, and we had conversations internally. I also had some conversations with George's agent, Dave, who I have a good relationship with, and we discussed where things, I guess, have been with George, where they are, and where things could go with George, and this trade made sense for everyone. But here we are, and happy to take any questions.
Did he want to leave?
He never asked. If you're asking, I was never asked to. I was never told that he wanted to leave. No.
Omar, you guys have been pretty supportive of him throughout his 3 years here. How did you get to the point where him going somewhere else turned out to be the best course of action?
We just kind of talked about it. Lots of serious conversation, honest conversations, and we just felt that a fresh start for both sides was the right thing.
Were those conversations about a potential extension? Were you negotiating with him for an extension?
We don't talk about negotiations. We just felt it was a time for a fresh start.
Omar, is it obvious to say that draft picks are harder to come by, more valuable before the draft than after?
It's a good question. Like for me, those draft picks are valuable no matter what. But yeah, when you get to the, I think this is what you're asking, Jim. But I think when you're the day of the draft or you're going through the draft, like every one of those picks feels like they're the greatest pick. That you don't want to get rid of them or they're valuable. But I mean, they're all important.
How do you view it? Do you view it as a disappointment that it didn't work out, or do you just move on and say we got that third round pick, let's just move on? How does the organization feel?
I wouldn't use the word disappointment. We had 3 years with George, and we had some exciting times. But it was just time for the fresh start for both sides was the right thing.
How does this impact this team this year? And how do you feel about the depth of receiver?
We wouldn't have done this if we didn't feel good about the this receiver situation, about our depth here. I know people make the comparison about last year. It's not even close to being the same.
What's the difference?
Well, obviously we made the investment with DK. We've had another year with some of the young guys and gotten to know them, watch them develop. We had a Robert Woods. Like I said, we've had Roman's healthy. I've seen him the last couple weeks out here and how he's doing. And we saw how he was progressing at the end of last year. Obviously, he didn't get the chance to to get on the field, but there was some excitement there. But we have a good group. There's some guys that are back. And we've seen their growth and have another year under our belt with them and feel good about it.
Is there a potential pool that's more easily accessible for veterans in free agency as opposed to where you were a year ago too? Because it felt like last year when all those names were being bandied about, there were potential trades. Whereas do you have a wider pool that maybe you can pick from in free agency this year that could backfill?
You mean right now as we sit here today? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I'll say this. If there's an opportunity to add a playmaker in offense, regardless of whether it's a receiver or wherever it is, we're going to look into it. And, if it makes sense, it makes sense. But, there's always good players available. And, I mean, that's an interesting question. There's good players out there. If we wanted to add some people, we could. But, we feel comfortable with them.
Has there been an outright in terms of acquiring draft capital for next year? Was that been an objective that you aggressively have been trying to do, or in terms of compensatory picks and things like that?
Yeah, I'll say, this year we were in a position where enjoying, how should I say this? It was important for us to acknowledge the fact that we could be in a position to acquire comp picks next year. You guys saw how we did things in the offseason. That's obviously something that was on the back of our minds when we made decisions. And we'll see how it all shakes out. The next phase of this is how much these guys play to determine where those comp picks end up. But that's something we were, obviously cognizant of.
So did that play a role in why you didn't trade on draft weekend and get picked for this year?
What do you mean? Say it again.
The next year's draft pick and what you had just said,
Yeah.
that it played a role. You didn't make the trade on draft weekend because
Yeah.
of that?
No, it's not. It wasn't. You know, a trade that was interesting to us was not there draft weekend. You know, teams called, and they, you know, a lot of times you're just talking hypotheticals, and people say, hey, would you do X, Y, or Z? And you know, most of the time the answer is no, and there was just nothing there that was worth, discussing.
At owners' meetings, maybe elsewhere, you guys sounded pretty excited about DK and George and schematic challenges that could prevent the defenses. What changed between now and Wednesday?
Yeah, you know, it's just, you know, I guess we had a team that called and, you know, gave us something worth thinking about, and you know, we had the conversations, and like I said, we talked about, you know, where we've been and where we are, where we could be. And it just made sense that a fresh start was a good idea.
And I know the business aspect.
Guys, two more.
I know the business aspect always comes in with guys in the last year of their
Yeah.
deal, whether they're younger or older. I mean, do you guys think there was a chance he was going to do the hold-in type thing at training camp and all of that stuff?
You know, it's a hypothetical. I don't know where that would have gone.
Last one here, last one.
Does the track record that you guys have had of recent trading away of receivers that you guys have drafted, does that impact any vision for how you guys want to assemble your talent or the type of players you want to bring into your organization and moving forward?
No, I mean, some of that's just really coincidence how it's played out with the position. I mean, we're always trying to get good players regardless of what position it's at and at any point in the year. So, you know, I think there's some coincidence to that. But we want to get good players, good people, and, you know, we're chasing a championship, and every decision we make is based on trying to win a championship, not only, you know, in the future, but this year. I mean, we're focused on trying to win a championship this year. And, you know, I know there's a lot of questions about different things, but there's a lot of time between now and the start of the season. And but rest assured, we're trying to win a championship this year.